Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Exploits in Wetware. Really glad to be here. This is going to focus on more of the human element of hacking. Who knows what this picture is? Anybody? Okay, a couple people, good. So this is a picture from Defcon Vegas. This is the SC Social Engineering Village. And that's where a lot of this material came from. I competed there for 2 years, and then I've been using a lot of this in my work as well over the last couple of years. So it's really a combination of real-world experience and then also this CTF, which actually targets real companies. So a good mixture of both there. If you're interested in social engineering, I highly recommend you take a look at this event. It's really exciting. I'll speak a little bit about it in this presentation, but if you want to go and compete there, let me know, and I'm happy to work through it with you and give you my material and talk about it in more depth on what you can do there. So just a quick little bit about me. So I've been working in the industry for about 20 years. I do a lot of volunteer experience in search and rescue, so I'm a tracker for about 10 years. And why that's relevant is because it's very similar to how we do OSINT as far as looking for sign and intel and stuff like that. I'm also the founder of Trace Labs, so I don't know if you've seen that here yet. We just had a mini documentary that was launched. It's on YouTube, so if you Google Trace Labs, you'll see that. We do OSINT CTF for missing people. And that's my contact information, so if you have any questions or recommendations on this presentation, please let me know. All right, so there's a lot of great things going on here today, so I want to kind of give you an overview of what I'll be going through to make sure that matches your expectations. This is a basic agenda. All right, I have to do this slide. None of the information I present here today in any way represents any company that I've worked for now, in the past, or in the future. Okay, let's get into social engineering, a brief introduction. So this gets tricky. It used to be very binary, very black and white to me, what social engineering was all about. I would say the difference between social engineering and, say, influence would be you could influence somebody and it would be in their best interest. You would be helping the person, whereas social engineering is typically a manipulation. So you're doing something that's not in their best interest. However, over the last few years, I've discovered that there's a lot of gray area. For example, what if you do nothing and then the person does something for you or gives you some information that you didn't ask for, you just didn't tell them not to, right? So it's really interesting as we progress with social engineering. It's viewed as very negative, but there's degrees of negativity there. So I'm getting into that more and more, and if you want to talk later about that, it's a fascinating subject. So some examples of social engineering. So these are some of the older ones that we see. We still see these, unfortunately, right? So things like impersonation. That's where I dress up as maybe the janitor or somebody who does services in your building, and I walk in and pretend I'm somebody else. So we see this quite a bit still. It's very effective for you physical pen testers. You can be pizza delivery, FedEx, anything like that. Tailgating, we still see that, still very effective. If you want to get into a building, carry a bunch of donuts or a bunch of coffees or anything like that, 9 times out of 10, people are still very eager to help you come through the door. Shoulder surfing, we see this a little bit less now because of the protective screens and the new technology that's out there to help with that. But it is still a concern. There was a story in the news not too long ago about a person on a bus where that information was viewed from people behind them. So it's still going on. Dumpster diving is a little bit better. We shred a lot of our information now, but there's still a lot of availability there for data breach. Current attacks. So this is changing fairly quickly, but it's still a numbers game, right? So we see high volume for these sort of attacks with an expectation of, say, 1 to 10% success rate. So we see the phishing, the vishing, the smishing, of course, right? That's nonstop. It's getting better and better. Some of it's getting more targeted, and some of it, especially for whaling, is becoming more of a combination attack. Of course, as a service, social engineering as a service, especially for the vishing and phishing services, everything is as a service now. You can get your denial of service as a service. even. So we're seeing more of that. And then the social media impersonation, fake accounts to harvest credentials. I had this the other day where you're in the lineup to get your rental car, and the lineup is long, so you get on Twitter and you start to complain to the company. You say, oh, I've been waiting an hour. You get a tweet back that says, oh, so sorry, click this link and put in your information, we'll give you a free credit. Well, it's not really that company. It's a fake company. So what's next? All sorts of good stuff is coming our way with these attacks. And these are actually, a lot of these are happening right now, right? So virtual kidnapping, take your account. I can do all sorts of things with your account once I've got it. Whaling, of course, your executives. So those are really the high-value targets. And so there's a lot more energy put into that. Saffron Rose was a good example of that. I believe that was last year. One of my favorites is the pseudo-ransomware hybrid attack, where really it's just a distraction. So if I want to attack your company, I know you have resources in your company to defend, but you only have so many. So you might have 10 people in your blue team or doing operational security. So if I distract them, keep them busy, that's going to be great for the real attack, right? Professional network solicitation. So this is very popular. I've seen it a little bit less this year than last year. But the solicitation, the flattering of your skill set, saying, oh, you are awesome at this. You're exactly what we're looking for. Would you like to come to our country or do an interview with us? Headhunters and conference invites as well. Thousands Talent Program was very popular last year. So where did social engineering come from? What's the origin story? It's hard to tell, really, but sales and marketing have been doing this for years very effectively. So the ability to change your mind, to buy something. I love to go to a used car lot. I go to a used car lot usually with a really big cup of coffee. And I'm not usually intending to buy a car, but I really like to go through the techniques that they will use to convince me that it's a good idea to buy the car and to convince me to spend the most amount of money to do that. So it's really interesting to see that. One of the other great examples of this, usually in the cities, like in Paris, you'll see this. In London and Berlin, I saw this a lot. If you go to see the street performers, especially the ones that are doing three-card Monte, the trick in of itself is not that sophisticated. You can Google it and figure out how they do it. But the way they entice people in, by kind of showing them the cards really quickly to get them to think that they can cheat the system, it's fascinating to watch a really good group of people that are doing that. So what's the trend with social engineering? These numbers are great. I mean, if you're doing a Vishing program, you will be effective, really. It's strictly about the numbers. So somebody's going to click the link, and that's going to work out for you. If you're doing a phishing program, you need to be sensitive to your employees because they will eventually click. You will get success rates. So this is really, the trend is going up. If you were to bet on this, it's a very safe bet. However, when we look at the different models in our training, we look at things like if you have your CISSP, there was not a lot of social engineering content there, was there? The ISO model, or if you look at that, it only goes up to application. It doesn't have anything about user. So, you know, this is a bit of a joke here with this table. We've added the user component there. Because really, we can talk about firewalls, we can talk about perimeter, we can talk about all these things, but if I call your employees and ask for their password, they're going to give it to me. So I really think we need to integrate more of the social engineering component into what we do. Okay, so Kevin Mitnick, of course, he said it well years ago. He's one of the experts in this area. Are you all convinced how big and concerning social engineering is? Anybody not convinced yet? I need one person, otherwise I can't do the demo. Okay, thank you, sir. Perfect. Thank you very much. But it was good that most of you are convinced already. Great. So I'm going to do a quick demo. It's ridiculous because I have like, 30 seconds to do it, okay? And the other part about this is why I hate doing it is because if I trick you, you hate me. If I don't trick you, I'm a fraud. So I lose either way, but it's kind of fun to do, so we'll do it, okay? So it's as quickly as I can an example of how social engineering might work and the rhythm of it. So it's all about technique and speed and rhythm. So let's say we're all a company. here, okay? We just started this company. It's an awesome company. I'm the one security guy for all of you, and I'm going to write this policy that says, like typical policies say, right, don't do something. None of you will read it, of course, but I'll write it, and I'll feel good about that. So I need something that's visual so I can see if you're violating the policy. So let's use like hand flipping, because I can see that, okay? And I'm not going to make you dance or anything like that, but just hand flipping. Does that sound fair? Okay, good. So the policy says no hand flipping, okay? So anything after this point, throughout the whole day, don't flip your hands, okay? Okay, good. So just put your hands out in front of you like a zombie, and so I can see your hands. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, we're going to start with our hands up. Okay, so that's it. So I got a few of you. I know it's ridiculous, right? But just because I got you to do this, and then I got you to do that, so I'm sorry. So it's ridiculously short, but I don't have a lot of time. If you want to do more complicated, Google the shell game or three-card Monty or something like that. Those are even better. So if you want to do social engineering in your company and you want to do maybe a Vishing program or phishing or get some awareness going, you just Google it. You'll find tons of information about how effective it is. One of my favorites is a $50 million bank transfer. That's a bad day. All right, so I'm going to go through the SECTF really quick, brief overview of what that looks like, because this is such a good example of how effective it is. Basically, these are new people that come into this. They're not necessarily super familiar with it, so they're getting up to speed very quickly. They're targeting real companies, and so if you know what I'm doing with Trace Labs, you know that I'm a big fan of the non-theoretical, and that's what this is. That's why I love it. So stage one is you do your OSINT. If you get accepted, 16 competitors compete in this at Vegas. You start off at home in your pajamas if you want. I did about 6,000 minutes, which is a huge amount of time. The first year I did it, I just collected everything on the company. Executive cell phone numbers, the names of their pets, everything. You've got 29 flags. You're not allowed to engage, so it's passive recon. And then you get points for that, and then you go to Vegas and you do your Vishing. So you're phoning the company, the actual company, and you've got 20 minutes to get the same flags. So it's really interesting to watch. Even to watch, it's fascinating. The flags, fairly benign, right? So I can't really read that. You probably can't either. But they're things like, what's your service pack level? How long have you worked for the company? When do you get paid? What's your OS? That sort of stuff. So it's not good. You don't want to freely give that out. But it's not terrible stuff. These are better. So this would be what I would ask your company, right, in real life. So I want to know about your environment. What are your assets? What's your patch level? So if I want to attack, I need to know that. What are some of the ways I can deploy exploits? So is it going to be email, web, just dropping USB keys in your elevator? What's that look like? What's your antivirus, perimeter, like what kind of firewalls are you using? All this sort of stuff would be much more interesting to me. Some of the other areas I really like to focus on is your backups. So attackers are going to be motivated for a few different reasons. Maybe it's malicious, so they want to delete data so you can't restore. So your RTO, RPO is important. Your DRP plan, do you have a DRP plan? Right, so that would be interesting. I haven't seen many stories yet where attackers remove your DRP plans so that you don't have processes to follow, but that would be interesting. How do you respond to an attack? That would be good intel to know. So I'm going to get into the OSINT side of it a little bit now. So as you're starting your OSINT operations, and we do this a lot now with Trace Labs, so we're doing this every week. This is more focused on people than companies, but this will be more company focused. So the first thing I will do is I'll take a look at what's the entity that I'm about to look at. What's the dynamics of that, right? So are they a multinational company? Are they a single building? What does that building look like? So starting to zoom in on the locations, street view, of course, and looking through that. Getting into the technical, their websites, their IPs, all their technical information. Getting into the corporate, so their legal documents online. Property management is an excellent resource to look like. Anything that they've registered, of course. And then you get into the big area, which of course is staff, and that's where you can spend a large amount of time. So my go-to favorite, of course, is LinkedIn. So I love it so much because it's so well organized for OSINT. It's got some limitations. It tries to make you pay for the service. If you use this LinkedIn X-Ray, it's an excellent tool, and there's a few other tools you can use as well. That was the one I used quite a bit. You can get around some of the limitations of the free version. But the reason I like it is because you get a structure of the organization very quickly. You get to find out who the key players are very quickly, the pictures, but then also in the top right corner, it will sometimes give you the rest of their social media, so you actually don't have to go hunting for that. It's just right there. So this is one of the most effective places to start, especially for large data collection. And then, of course, you will get a ton of information. If you're looking at a large company of several thousand people, that's a huge amount of information. So what you want to do is find the key players, social butterflies, those people that are posting a large amount of inappropriate data. So when I first did this, I was terrible. And so, of course, I was detected by people. I would go onto LinkedIn and look at the company with my own account. And, of course, they would then all look at mine. So not a good idea. So I learned very quickly that that's not a good idea to do. So you want to set up your environment. And typically, when we do OSINT operations, what I find is, especially people that are new to it, they want to jump right in very quickly. That initial setup is really important, making sure your platform's set up, making sure you're prepared to find the information and then do something with it, right? So if you're going to go to court with it, if you're going to need to organize it and produce a report, you need to be organized as you get set up. So just take the time to make sure you're not detected, but then also that you've got your preparation set up, right? So how are you preserving your information? How is it going to be contained and then reported out? How are you going to convey what those important data points are that you find? We work with Hunchley a lot. It's a great product. He's also Canadian, so am I. So I can't stress that enough. Most people want to jump right into it. All right, let's get into Vishing a little bit. So now you've done your OSINT on your target. You've got some great information. You're ready to go. You need to kind of boil it down to, okay, who are going to be my marks? And in the SE CTF in Vegas, you only have 20 minutes. So, of course, you want to have select people that you know are going to be successful. Same in the real world, right? You can't phone everybody in the company. Well, you could, but if you're mass doing this. But if you're a targeted test team, you probably wouldn't. So this is the formula that I used that was very effective. I'm looking for a low LinkedIn score. And the reason for that is I don't want somebody that's a real veteran in the industry. I want somebody that's relatively new and just doesn't know how things work too well yet. I'm looking also for somebody who likes self-promotion. So if they're doing a lot of selfies, I know that they're sharing a lot of information. I know that they're probably going to talk to me when I get them on the phone. So that's really good. And I also want poor judgment. So I want someone who overshares. So I want that person who's posted the VPN information on their Twitter or whatever. So I'm looking for high charisma, low wisdom, and typically what that turns out to be is interns and contractors. And then the reason for that is I think interns, they're fairly new to the company. They don't know. Contractors not as invested in the company. So again, those are my go-to targets. All right, some techniques that I used in Vegas, and these you'll find a lot of them are used by sales as well. So when you get a sales call, they use some of these. So the confirmation, how do you like the Dell laptops? I know you already have Dell laptops because I've done my OSINT. Now I can start a conversation with you, and because you're going to give me your opinion, which is great. Now I have dialogue, and that's what I want. The reverse confirmation, I have to drop my ego to do this and let you correct me. And a lot of people like to do that. So if you know the personality of your target and you know they're that way, this could be a really good technique. Name dropping. So I will usually use this one in a compliment. So I'll say, hey, you were suggested to talk to us from so-and-so. It makes you feel really good, but it also gives you this title of authority. Blowing smoke. So again, you were recommended to work with us. So I'm trying to make you feel really good with that one. Impending doom. I've used this one in Vegas. It was really effective. I really like it. There's an event that's going to happen. Something's coming your way. You can't stop it, but I can help you get through that. So an example of that would be, hey, we're going to be on site tomorrow to do maintenance on your HVAC, and I just want to know, are you prepared for that? Can I help you in any way? They'll be surprised, but you're there to support them. Allowed to vent. If you can get people to complain, I find that's very nice. Quite often, if everybody's professional, people don't want to complain to strangers, but if you can, that can be very productive. Smarty pants. So just giving people compliments in everyday life. So this is what I was talking about with social engineering being kind of a gray area. Whenever you give people compliments, they feel good, right? Is that a bad thing? I don't think so, right? I think it's quite nice, actually. But if you're doing social engineering, it's a great place to start. So by just giving somebody a compliment as a starting point to the dialogue. Zero-sum game. So this is used a lot by real attackers and salespeople. The first 3 people will win this, right? So it's a time-sensitive thing. Sympathy. This is a great one as well. So because everybody wants to help everybody else. Oh, I'm new at this. Can you please help me? Done right, that is so hard to resist, right? Very few of us don't want to help people. So then you have your pretexts. These are some of my go-to ones. These are entry methods. So how do you get into a company, on the phone so that I can move around within the company? Because it's tricky. Sometimes you're going to hit reception. If you don't have a direct inward dial phone number for a certain target, you're going to hit reception. How do I get through reception? So intern program. So I don't know if it's called interns here in the US. It's called interns. In Canada, it's called co-ops. So I'm calling from the school to find out how my intern or co-op is doing. Sounds very legitimate. I did a lot of research with receptionists, and I would talk about these different pretexts, and they would tell me, oh yeah, that might work, and that one definitely won't work. This was one of the winners. Anything to do with industry knowledge. So we all have different areas of knowledge. Mine is more data center focused, so I can talk a lot about data centers and HVAC. So that's always my go-to story. So I talk about HVAC maintenance. I need to talk to your facilities people. So that's one of my favorites. Targeted methods. And so this was a technique that Mitnick would use a lot. So he was very layered approach. And he would just stack those layers up so that by the time he got to the final call, he had so much information. So these work very, very well, and they can be very scripted. So the FedEx one, we all have got the FedEx call. Some of it might be on your voicemail, so you can listen to it over and over again. So you can really dial that in and get it perfect and sound exactly like FedEx to get a little bit of information from them. The potential tenant, so maybe you're phoning them and you're going to move into their building, you're saying, and you want to find out a little bit about the property management. That works really well as well. One of my favorites is, can I tell you a secret, the recruitment layoff. So I'm calling from a company, we're going to lay off some people, I want to talk to your HR because these people might want to apply for jobs in your company. The HR people are often motivated by that because they may get a bonus for bringing people in. So they're financially motivated to talk to me to give me information about their company. So if you can find the linkage like that, where people are going to get money for telling you their secrets, that works really well. Full dumps. So in Vegas, you're motivated as a contestant to get as much information as fast as possible because you only have 20 minutes in the booth. So these were full dumps. It's just trying to get one person to tell me everything. You're the lucky winner, radio contest. Just answer these questions about your company, and you win a prize. Not that effective, really, because this is kind of an old gimmicky technique. But if you want to get a lot of information in a hurry, sometimes it could work. One of the better ones I found was the upgrade opportunity. So I'm your new Dell account rep. When your account rep changes, they don't usually notify you. Sometimes they do now. It's getting more common. But I could just cold call you, and say, hey, I'm your new account rep, and I want to ship you some new products so you can try it out. Something that's going to be, sound good to you and be enjoyable, so I can then get a dialogue going. Employment engagement survey, one of the best ones I did. So, and I'll mix a couple techniques in with this. So I'll say, hey, the VP of HR told me to call you. She said that you would be an excellent person to talk to about this. We're doing an employee engagement survey, and I want to design it to be very effective so I can help increase the engagement in your company. Do you have a few minutes to talk to me about that? And then I just rip through all the questions, and this one works really well. Okay, you caught me. So a lot of people say in social engineering, if you get caught, you should just stick to your pretext and just keep with the same story. I don't really think that's as effective as saying, okay, you caught me. Great job. I was actually hired by your company to do this, and you're the first person that's questioned me. Congratulations. I'm going to tell your boss, and that's fantastic. Now, can I go through all these questions with you just to do a baseline? So you're going to get the answers anyway that way. So I haven't tried that. I've just been dying to try that. All right, so now we've done some attacks. Let's get into some defense techniques. First, a little reflective moment. So, would you know if you were attacked by social engineering? Would your executives tell you that, oh yeah, we just did a wire transfer of $50 million? You don't have to answer that out loud, but I'm betting a lot of us wouldn't right away, especially. And then would we know how to respond to that, right? So who do you call if you weren't really, there was no breach necessarily, but your executive just did a money transfer, right? So who gets involved there? Probably the legal department, maybe fraud, the police, of course, your banking, your finance team, right? So all these people, but whose fault is it, right? Who's getting fired? So my bet is they're going to come to information security and say, why didn't you educate us, right? That's my bet. So something to think about. We don't often spend a lot of money in our total information security budget to look at these areas, but I think we need to start focusing on that more. So some quick recommendations that you can do. So of course, OSINT yourself, that's always fun. OSINT your partner, OSINT your friends. Friends of mine, when they're renting their accommodations, they will send me sometimes the people that are going to rent it. I'll do some quick OSINT on them and tell them what that looks like. OSINT your company, that's also very interesting. Find those butterflies, find the people that are just giving away everything. Then you can go down and sit down with them and talk to them about that, right? We can't stop people from self-promoting. People are going to continually self-promote what they're doing, and they should. They should be proud of what they're doing, but they need to have good judgment. So don't put the VPN information on the internet, right? But we need to educate them about that. Show them what's at risk. Building up our defenses. So phishing programs are excellent to do. They need to be done correctly. You don't want to insult your employees. You don't want to alienate your employees. You want to reward them, right? So you want to find out how many people click on it, but then also how many people are reporting that to you afterwards. So we did a phishing program a while ago. It definitely increased the amount of people that come into IT and into information security and say, hey, should I click on this or not? Like, it looks a little bit weird. So that's what you want, right? Some things you can do is putting an EXT tag on incoming emails so you can always see if that's really from the president or not. Stop allowing active links. Nobody's going to do that, but that is an option. I only met one company that did that, and I'm sure that it's not very convenient. Provide safer communication channels, right? So email is really painful. If you get as many email as I do, and I'm sure you do, you just can't read them all. And so you're going through them as fast as you can to process. It's like maybe 1 second on each email. And if it looks legit, you're clicking the link, right? So, there's a lot of other technologies out there that we can start to get into. Phish your executive. Those are really the high-value targets. So if they're educated and prepared for, what's about to descend upon them, that's probably better. They can avoid the embarrassment later. But of course, get their permission. Talk to them about it. Make sure they buy into it. Create choke points. Your receptionist in your company is kind of really a bastion of the physical entry, right? So, but how much money do we invest in our receptionists to do that? How much information security training do we give those people? So I've spoke to dozens of them around what they do and how they do it, and it's amazing, but most of it is self-taught. So there's a great opportunity there. On your PBX, I love your PBXs because I can call into them at night, and I get so much information. You can remove dial by name because that's the first thing I go to, and most of them are all the same vendor. So moving around in it is actually pretty similar. But I'll get your name, your extension, your DID if you've got one. If you're on holiday, I usually get your voicemail. I can find out where you went on holiday, who else is responsible while you're away, your cell phone number, just tons of stuff. So. And also DIDs. I don't think your whole company needs direct inward dial. I would use extensions for some of your non-salesy type people. And then, of course, stop answering the phone. So I did this talk internally, and there was a lot of managers in the room, and they all gave me the stink eye. So, of course, if your boss calls, you want to pick up the phone. But otherwise, I never pick up my phone anymore. It goes straight to voicemail. I hear the voicemail, unless I recognize the name, and then I can decide whether to call them back or not. Get on the offensive, right? So there's a whole bunch of things we could do that most companies don't do, right? We have the annual training that's available, but it's not very effective, right? So instead, I would encourage you to create goals for your employees, right? Start giving out prizes, coffee cards, and things like that, and do it every month, right? Don't wait a whole year to do your training, right? Because people are going to forget that the day after they do it, if they even do it. So instead, I would celebrate when people actually are effective and they do something. Like, so if somebody comes to you and they have an email and they didn't click the link, give them a coffee card, or and celebrate that. Put it on your SharePoint site or your intranet. And then the cultural change, right? So we always say in information security, the bad guys only have to get lucky once. And so we have that scale challenge, right? And so the way to win against that is to create this culture of protectionism, right? So if I want to draft through and tailgate through the front door, it's awkward to stop me, right? You kind of feel like, you don't want to say no, you don't want to close the door on my face. But if you develop that culture of, I need to see your ID card, and if I don't see one, I'm going to help you and bring you to reception, right? So it's hard to change the culture to get there, but I think by doing this sort of education with your employees and celebrating when they are doing things well, you can get there. All right, so everybody always asks me for tools and resources, so I'm going to show you these, but know that these change every day. These were some of my go-to favorites, but every day there's new OSINT tools out there that I like. So really, this is just a snapshot in time. I encourage you to go out there and look at the different tools, and then also the techniques, which I think are even more important. Oops. So the physical, I always start there. These are ridiculously easy, but YouTube, if you can find a tour of the office and just slow it down slide by slide, you'll get everything. You'll get CCTV, you'll get the card scan on the door, you'll get different access points. Google Maps, of course, Street View. What I like to do is look at the loading dock. I like to look at the roof to see what's on the roof, different points of entry. There's so much you can get from that. I also like to do where you can go back in time with Google Maps to see what's changed, right? How they changed parking providers. All that sort of stuff is really nice. And also different points in the day. So what's it look like at night as opposed to the daytime? IoT, of course, now there's tons of stuff there as well. But on the technical side of things, of course, these are some of the go-to ones. Hurricane Electric is great. Wiggle is one of my favorites. So you can get the SSID typically from that without actually doing any technical work at all. So that's a great go-to tool. On the corporate side, so these, again, are basic, but they give you so much information. So Indeed, you're going to give me your job descriptions, and in your job descriptions, you're going to show me all of your technology that you use, right? You're going to say, we need somebody that knows how to use, Checkpoint Firewall or Palo Alto or something like that, right? So, okay, now I know what you use. Pastebin, you can set up alerts for the company in Pastebin, which is really nice. Glassdoor, same sort of thing. Employees will complain about the company and tell me what's going on there as far as different things I can use. I like to focus on, you can focus on security guards, card access. There's tons of stuff you can get from there. And then, of course, staff. So LinkedIn, I mentioned that. That's my go-to. Instagram, I think, is probably my close second, just because there's so much good information there. SlideShare is nice for reference letters. Reference letters are important because they will give you, typically they're written by executives, and typically they will give you things like their home phone number or their cell phone number, which is really nice to have to further your OSINT on that particular target. I'm not sure if they do that here, but in Canada, criminal records are also publicly available. And so I will always look at that to see if you have a criminal record, because not only does it give me more insights into who you are, but it also gives me your aliases. So several criminals that we've found that we look at, they'll have a ton of aliases, and then their social media will be built on those aliases. So that's really interesting to take a look at, depending on what kind of your target is. And then, of course, personal websites. Lots of people will self-promote, and they'll point to their personal website, which will have their resume, which, again, will be just super rich in information. So really quick, this is kind of a cheat sheet that you can use that I would suggest that will help you protect your company against people like me and people much worse than me, right? There's a lot of stuff going on here, but you don't need to put your job descriptions in your specific technologies in your job descriptions, right? You can remove that, make it a little more generic, make it harder for me, right? Your posts on the technical forums, we're reading that, right? So when you're complaining about having a problem with your Palo Alto firewall, people are reading that, right? When you're saying at what level you're at for your patch level, we're reading all that. Do some training with your phishing, right? Auto log off, of course, most of us are doing that, as well as on your VPN. So have your VPN timeout. That's a big one. Microsegmentation, I'm a really big fan of that, of course, as well. Assume that they're already in. 2FA everything. Privacy screens, most of us are doing that. Some of them are built into the computers already. Your corporate stickers that are on your laptops that say where you work, those are really nice. You might want to get rid of that. Removing the decision factor by humans, right? So just removing the ability for people to make a mistake is really nice as well if you can do that. The choke points within your organization, so your receptionist, if you can get that person a little more trained, usually they're amazingly good already, but I would invest more there. And CCTV, I can't count how many times we look at people's CCTV and they find out that it's actually not recording, so, or nobody's watching it, which could be a great improvement. All right, resources. So in Canada, we go to toddington.com. That's a great resource. Of course, in the US, Intel Techniques, of course, recently you've probably seen they've had to remove some of their free tools. That's going to be, Michael Bazell's told me that's going to be available soon, but it will be at a pay membership. And then, of course, Social Engineer, that's another great resource. He's got the podcast, the books, and, of course, the SE Village, if you want to participate in that. And then if you want to learn more about social engineering in general, Caldini, 6 Principles of Influence, there's YouTube videos and books and stuff like that that you can take a look at that are really good. And that's it. So I've got 3 minutes left, it says there. Do you guys have any questions for me today? Thank you.